Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Kendra Love. I'm with Florida Organic Growers and the Southeast Transition to Organic Partnership Program. Very excited today to be able to speak on the topic of raising organic rate, how to for livestock compliance. Today, I'm with our colleagues at Clemson University, Gavin Berry and Madison May, who are going to be presenting on this topic. First, we'd like to say thank you to the USDA. Because of their support through the Transition to Organic Partnership Program, we are able to provide this webinar. TOPP is a program of the USDA Organic Transition Initiative. It's administered by the USDA Agricultural Marketing Service, a national organic program. A little bit about TOPP, the Southeast Transition to Organic Partnership Program is a program based here in the Southeast. We have 7 states and 2 territories that we're able to support through this initiative. And there are 5 key programmatic areas. We have a farmer-to-farmer mentorship program, community building, free technical assistance, data collection, and workforce training and development initiatives. If you'd like to learn more about this program, you can find us at organictransition.org. You can look at the Southeast Regions page. The QR code on the screen will also take you to that website. And if you have any questions at any time about this program, technical assistance, mentorship, certification, anything like that, we're always able to help. Our email, setop@foginfo.org, is also on the screen. With that, we're very excited to start this webinar, and I'm going to turn it over to Gavin and Madison.
Thank you, Kendra. Thank you for the introduction there. So yeah, let's get started. So hi everyone, I'm Gavin Berry. I work with Clemson's Department of Plant Industry that houses the organic certification program at Clemson. I've been with Clemson around 19 years, working a variety of different certification and compliance programs over that 19 years. As Kendra said, today's topic is about livestock, raising organic right, how to for livestock compliance. Madison is also with me today. She's our livestock scope specialist and organic certification specialist with our program. Madison, would you like to say a few words?
Hey everyone, I am just very excited to be here and discuss some livestock regulations with y'all.
Thank you, Madison. So the agenda for today kind of looks like this. I want to give you a little bit of an overview of the Clemson program, just kind of who we are, where we fit into the community. I know this is for the whole Southeast TOPP partners, so you may not be real familiar with our program. We want to do a few community updates, kind of show you how we work with agencies like the Accredited Certifiers Association and the National Organic Program, the National Standards Board, all to kind of help develop policy, look at ways that we'll implement some of the requirements within the regulatory oversight of the National Organic Program. We'll cover livestock in kind of 2 ways. I think Madison's doing it all at once, but just general livestock compliance and certification, and some of the rule changes that have impacted livestock over the last few years. And then we'll talk about a few upcoming opportunities, ways that TOPP partners can participate with Clemson on a few upcoming events. And then we'll open it up to the Q&A. So the Clemson program is kind of a small program. It's a state-supported program, but we offer certification under all 4 of the scopes there: crop processing, handling, livestock, and wild crops. We're small, like I said. There's only 5 of us on our team, but we only serve the state of South Carolina, really. We have about 80 operations in the state of South Carolina. We serve about 4,700 acres within the state. There's a few sites we do outside of the state of South Carolina, but those operations are based or have a strong tie to South Carolina. So we will, to help them with their full certification, visit some of their sites outside of the state. A fun fact about Clemson University is that we're one of 80 certifiers worldwide, or about 80. That number fluctuates a little bit. But we're the only land grant university still doing this work. And we got into this around 2002 when there was really a push to get a lot of certifying bodies by the USDA. We kind of have a diverse portfolio of clients and products, hemp and, skincare products and, the things you would think we certify, like eggs and tomatoes and stuff like that. So we kind of have a wide scope of things that we're involved in. And so that diversity brings us a lot of enjoyment, but it also brings some challenges for us to build quality systems that kind of represent all of those different areas. So I wanted to show this stakeholder map and show you kind of where we fit in to the national conversation here with the organic oversight. So, certifiers are there smack in the middle, and that's really us at Clemson. We're, like I said, a small state certifier. So, we work with a lot of certified operations. We do some, in point of sale, retail sale, verification and checks and stuff. But really, I wanted to talk about that upper part of this. I wanted to talk about how the National Organic Program kind of works and accredits certifiers and the National Standards Board. And then an agency that's not on here, the Accredited Certifiers Association, they would fit kind of in that quadrant over there, just under the National Standards Board. So we really try to work to develop a good relationship with our USDA accreditation manager, folks on the audit team and accreditation team at the National Organic Program. There are a lot of resources that they may provide, a lot of conversations that are had, kind of about, how we implement and do some of our oversight activities. And then the National Standards Board is made up of a member from the ACA, but it's also made up of producers. So we really kind of like to pay attention to what their recommendations are, what they're advising. And we try to really rely on that network that the ACA creates for us to have conversations with other certifiers. So again, this is a little more about the Accredited Certifiers Association, but really one of the benefits that we really get out of it is, like I said, that network, strengthening organic enforcement, which we'll talk about a little more in a minute. It's brought some things into light where certifiers really need to be working together. We don't want there to be a lot of discrepancies in how we're implementing new rule changes and things. So, sharing that perspective with the national group that will help shape kind of those implementation tools we use is really kind of important. SOE also increased the amount of qualifications certifiers need to do annually. So we really rely on the ACA to provide some of that real specific scope training. With that, let's kind of move on to some organic community updates. Everyone was talking about SOE the last couple of years. So you may be wondering kind of where we're at now on the SOE front. So SOE stands for Strengthening Organic Enforcement. It was really introduced because of the supply chains. We're starting to become increasingly complex. There were potential risks there involved, imports from outside of the United States, equivalency agreements, not necessarily always lining up. Fraud was a documented, risk and documented cases of it. So SOE really helps to kind of strengthen some of that oversight to kind of do away with some of those fraud risks. So implementation of SOE was in March 19th of 2024. So at this point now in late 25, we've been under an SOE umbrella for quite a while now. The verification has really kind of begun. That's what we're doing this year. We're really looking at some of our operations systems for the first time under SOE. So we were also audited, and so the USDA, the National Accreditation Program, they're coming out and looking at us to make sure we have implemented SOE to the point in which we said. So what are some trends that are coming out of that we're starting to see? Well, of course, a burden that a lot of folks always talk about is the increased documentation. I think in some ways maybe that's true, that it has increased some of the documentation required for producers and processors to collect. But there's a lot of focus on trying to look at high risk. So fraud prevention plans is kind of one of the way we do that. So, like I said, it may be still to be determined on the increased documentation really being a barrier. But one of the things we've certainly seen is more robust traceability, and that comes in the form of a lot of different things. Import certificates being a big one that the National Organic Program is focused on. We don't see a lot of that in South Carolina, and we don't really issue any import certificates. But we do have material that moves from out of the U.S. That's one way. I'm also seeing, folks coming into the supply chain that were never there before. I think SOE did a really good job at trying to identify who needs to be a certified organic player. So it's brought a lot more people into the organic supply chain. So as I was talking about SOE, I mean, one of the things I had mentioned already was fraud prevention plans. And so there's been a lot of conversation about what a fraud prevention plan should have, who needs one, how in depth it needs to be. But a change in the rule really required it added that bullet point there that's kind of outlined. Operations need to be doing some kind of risk assessment, looking at ways that they can prevent fraud. And then USDA kind of defines fraud at being anything really that's a deceptive representation of a product or a part of the organic supply chain. So there's a lot of different things that could potentially be identified on a fraud prevention plan. Just to let you know, I saw some certifiers do really simplistic approaches to fraud prevention plans right after SOE. Like, you tell us what your fraud prevention plan is. Other certifiers did really robust worksheets or forms that needed to be submitted. They really, outlined kind of a lot of areas, critical control points that their operation should be looking at. I'm not necessarily saying which trend's better, but we kind of adapted more and more of getting a developed fraud prevention plan that we're asking folks to fill out. I think a lot of the folks on this call are probably technical service providers, and so I feel like that's one area in which you could help the organic industry by helping them kind of look at fraud prevention planning and kind of figure out what they need to do. So here's some best management practices we've put together. I say we, but these are really supported by the ACA and some of their trainings. What's best practices for a robust supply chain oversight or organic fraud prevention plan? So, mapping out and taking inventory of your supply chain. You really need to understand what inputs you're using, where you're getting them from, where your products come from by, when you received it. There's also communication that happens beyond your farm, when your product leaves. So, kind of knowing where those potential issues could be. One of the bullets down there that's bolded is vulnerability assessment. So I can tell you that everyone in the organic community is doing vulnerability assessing. It's happening at small operations to large scale, but us as certifiers are having to do it too. We're having to look at where our risks are. with, like staff overturning and, those types of things, what qualifications and trainings that we needed to do, how we're developing our inspectors, how we're gaining our experience. So I like a couple of these. I really feel like they're strong and would help folks develop a good, robust fraud prevention plan. So a couple of other things happen at the national level or in between certifiers, kind of that certifier conversation. And you may have heard of some of these. We're really kind of excited about risk-based certification. What a lot of SOE is doing is trying to identify, like I said, those highest risk, where those points of concern could be. Where are you vulnerable in your organic integrity, so to speak? So everybody's looking at ways that they can focus on the high risk and what can be considered low risk. What do you not have to do, annually? Like, do we have to look at every field annually as part of the conversation now? Do we have to look at, all of your product profiles, so to speak? So, there's some yeses and nos somewhere into that. It really is operation specific, but as I was saying under the risk assessing, I mean, it's got to be scalable to your operation. But I think a risk-based approach can really help us spend our time wisely and where we need to. Another thing being tossed around a lot is the common OSP. I think a lot of us have probably heard that, wondering what is it, when is it coming, what's it going to look like? But the National Organic Program is working to try to develop an common organic system plan. Every certifier has their own kind of plan. It's kind of based in regulation. It's based off of templates that have been shared, but it's grown and it's expanded through the years. There's a lot of things we're collecting information on. So one of the thoughts behind a common OSP is it could help reduce some of the burden. Everyone could kind of be looking at the same template. You could get technical assistance because it's a common OSP. You don't have to know what Clemson's doing versus QCS versus CCOF. So there could be a lot of uniformity there that could streamline the process for a lot of folks. But as with all things that certifiers do, there's still going to be some uniqueness, some forms or some additions added to that OSP that are really needed for the oversight in which your certifier provides. So I hope that was informative and some good updates kind of from the community. Now we'll be getting into the livestock, and so take it away, Madison.
Hey everyone, thank you Gavin for that brief update. Who's excited to talk about some organic livestock today? Alrighty, let's get into it. So first off, regarding livestock, we're going to do a little bit of ag education in here as well. So I want everyone to think of livestock basically as 4 different categories. So first you're going to have your ruminant, and your ruminant is a even-toed mammal that has a 4-compartment stomach. The animals that consist of ruminants, they are going to chew their cud that comes back up and is regurgitated from their rumen. So you will see this in cattle, which is the main ruminant, I would say. And then you're going to go to small ruminants, which have the exact same process. They're just smaller, which would be your sheep and goats. Then you're going to have monogastric animals, which are animals with just a single stomach. So that would be your swine and your rabbit. And then poultry, which is a whole nother section. So, what sections of the CFR or the Code of Federal Regulations are relevant to organic livestock? So, the first thing we're going to talk about is the Organic Livestock and Poultry Standards Rule. This is a newer rule that just came out that kind of updated the CFR, as well as sections 205, 236 through 242 today as well. So the OLPS, or Organic Livestock and Poultry Standards Rule, it really specifies exactly what physical operation or physical alterations you can do to your organic livestock. Those are prohibited and can be used. It's going to set livestock living conditions that reflect the specific species of livestock, and it's also going to level out the consumer's expectations about what animal welfare is going on those operations. Your poultry livestock living standards are going to include indoor and outdoor space regulations now, as well as exit areas and stocking density. There are new regulations regarding the transport of all livestock, and it goes further into the slaughter process and how you can handle the slaughtering and transportation of animals through that. So the origin of livestock, which is 205-236, it discusses any animals that are to be sold, labeled, or represented as organic, and those animals must be under continuous organic management from the last third of gestation, except breeder stock. So you may be asking, well, what's breeder stock? Breeder stock are animals that are used to breed and repopulate the livestock on your operation. So these animals are not organic, but they must be brought onto the property before or while they are pregnant. And it has to be at least before the last third of the gestation period that they are raising. And these animals are only supposed to be able to nurse from their offspring. There can be no mixing of nursing a calf from a conventional animal versus its true mother. So some common gestation lengths, all animals, even, us as mammals, we are going to vary. We have an estimated timeline, so these are all just averages. But what you would do to determine the last start of this gestation, you are going to divide these numbers by 3. Ideally, you would want to know the date they're bred and the date that they are giving birth. So you would divide that number by 3, and as long as they are there for the last third of that time period, then those offspring can be considered organic. So like I said, the record keeping in this portion is very important. You need to be able to preserve the organic integrity of those animals that can be transitioned in dairy, or those that are you bringing on as breeder stock or offspring of those breeder stock. So the ways to do this, like I said, you'd want to know the birthing dates and the dates of property and have records on that, but also keeping up for identification records would be ear tags, any kind of branding. So once again, the birth, the death, and the slaughter records available, as well as any sales receipt for the animals itself or anything that they are ingesting. So some prohibited animals, like I said, of course, we talked about what could come on, but those that are not ever organically managed cannot be sold, labeled, or represented as organic. Or if they take those animals off the property, go back to conventional, they can't come back. They also must be under continual organic management through that last third for that offspring to be considered organic. So moving along into feed, which is 205.237. So all livestock must have a feed ration, which is comprised of all animal agricultural products, which includes pasture and forage. So they cannot feed any mammal or poultry products back to mammals or poultry, which you will see in some of your common animal and livestock feed. You can't use any drugs, including any kind of growth hormones. You can provide feed supplements, but you can't provide them in excess of what that specific animal at its stage of life would need. And you can't prevent or restrain any ruminant animals from obtaining feed that is to be grazed during the grazing season. So you can't lock them up when they're not supposed to be locked up for any reason, just because you don't want to. So a common part of what the livestock animals diet is going to be based on is based off pasture. So your pasture practice standard is 205.240. So in order to be certified livestock, you're also going to have pasture, which is going to be considered a crop. So you have to be able to have a functioning management plan for this pasture, and it has to be able to be audited as well, just like any other crop would be. Have to be compliant with the crop regulations, and you have to provide 30% of the ruminant's dry matter intake, which we'll get into on the next slide, But some common things that, we'll want to see are any management practices that are going on, what your defined grazing season is, because of course, depending on your region or area that you're located, it's going to be very different. The location and the acreage of your pastures, what grazing methods you're using, such as, are you doing rotational grazing practices? Are you putting muzzles on your animals? We want to note on the map of your location of all the fences and shelters that you're providing these livestock, and any erosion control practices as well. So once again, like I said, we're going to talk about dry feed. This is very important in your ruminants to determine exactly what percentage of nutrition that they're getting from this forage. So first of all, the dry matter is the amount of feed or feed stuff that remains after all the moisture is evaporated out. So example, you go from a grass, then it dries out to a hay. The dry matter demand is what is expected for that intake of specific animal, and the dry matter intake is what is actually given over that certain period of time. So say a fall winter season to a ruminant. So once again, the ruminants are a little different. They have these specified regulations. So you cannot provide more than 70% of a ruminant's dry matter demand from dry matter fed. So that means you're not overfeeding it, basically of what they need, or underfeeding it. There's a good little sweet spot you want to be in. So ruminants have to be grazed at least 120 days per calendar year. Of course, in the Southeast, and it will depend on what state and region you're in, but we will be well over this 120 days. Normally, I say for most of our operations here in South Carolina, you'll get at least 340 at minimum days of some grazing period. But you also want to make sure that you're providing a good enough quality of forage for your animal. So that's again where we're going to look at the height of what you're providing, make sure you're not getting enough parasites in there, but it's still providing at a good height where they're getting some nutrition that they need out of it. So once again, just like the pasture, if you are making hay out of this, or if you're purchasing any of your feed from anything that you're not just doing grass fed, you have to keep records of this as well. So you're going to want to describe all of the feed ration for every livestock that you have on the property. Any external supplements or like salt blocks, any things like that, minerals. We want to know exactly how much pasture is being eaten, like how many hours a day are they on specific pasture. And we have to have a form that shows how you calculate the dry matter demand and dry matter intake that you're feeding your animals as well. So moving along after feed, we're going to go more to in the animal welfare sector. So this is 205-238, which is the Livestock Care and Production Practice Standard. This really talks about some preventative health care that we go over. So you must maintain these as an organic operation. You want to select species that are suitable for the different type of regions that you're in, and that are also going to be kind of preventative to all prevalent diseases and parasites in your area, because different breeds are going to be more susceptible to experiencing these. You're going to want to provide a feed ration that meets those nutritional standards of those specific animal, have appropriate housing, pasture, and sanitation to minimize the spread of disease and parasites, provide conditions which allow for free movement, exercise, and the reduction of stress at each time of the animal's life cycle, depending on what species it is. Like I stated before, physical alterations may be performed for identification purposes, and we'll get into that a little bit later too. But you also can administer vaccines. Some people think you cannot, but you absolutely can if it is a listed product and you are doing it for the benefit of the animal. But we'll get in a little more of that as well. So continuing on parasites, producers, you can administer medications that are listed in 205-603 that will alleviate the pain and suffering of an animal when the veterinary biologics don't prevent sickness. So a parasite control plan, of course, your goats and your sheep are going to be a little more prone to getting these parasites. So you must have plans to minimize these parasites, such as your pasture management, any fecal manure monitoring, and what you would do if a emergency outbreak did take place. So, as I said, you can administer parasite control methods, but you can't do it annually. A lot of times on a conventional farm, you will see that they do this on the same day. Well, you don't want the animals to get too prone to this, and then say a new parasite comes up and they're susceptible to that. So you can't provide it annually, but you can if there's enough good documentation and record keeping. Another thing to think about is, this is not a good topic, but euthanasia. It's going to happen, and we want to know what you are going to do. As an organic producer, you have to be willing to put the organic animals' welfare in front of that organic label. So if they are sick or injured for whatever reason, you have to be able to say, okay, I would rather humanely euthanize than let that animal suffer, and we will all stand by that. But you do have to have a plan of what you're going to do if that were to take place. So going into some living conditions for all non-avian species, this is 205-239. We are going to want to see some year-round access to the outdoors. You need some shade, shelter, exercise areas, fresh air, clean water, and some direct sunlight, not artificial, but direct. The daily grazing and management of that pasture. Appropriate clean and dry bedding for that specific animal. It is good to note that if roughages are used as bedding, then those do need to be organically produced. That is something that you will have a conversation with your certifier, because some certifiers will classify that a little differently. So if you're wanting to add a different bedding, I would always contact the certifier first to confirm that that's okay. We also want to see some outdoor space, plenty of outdoor space. You got to have it. It must be provided at all times year round, and it has to include soil, but that soil must have vegetative cover that is maintained on it, such as a grass. And it has to be appropriate for what season you're in, the climate, and the livestock, as well as what stage of life that livestock is in currently. Shelter, the animal has to be able to lie down, move around, stand up, stretch out, basically. We want to know the temperature level. That way it's not too hot, too cold. Make sure there's a ventilation and air circulation coming through that area, and reduction of any potential kinds of injury as well. So swine, like I said, they're kind of on their own. I combine them with rabbits, but they are kind of on their own. They do have some specific regulations just for them. So if you do have swine, they must be housed in a group. Swine meaning pigs, by the way. And your sow, which is your mother pig, they can be housed individually instead of as a group if they're farrowing, which is the process of going to give birth, and during the time that they are having their piglets nurse off of them. So, but with this being said, any gestation and farrowing weights are prohibited because they don't allow for that free movement that we're looking for. You can also not have your boars, which are your intact males, in a group together, and you can separate them out because that can cause a little damage if you've ever experienced that. And if any of these swine have are known to be more aggressive, or if you are separating them and quarantining them from an illness, they do not have to be combined together. But in all other instances, yes, they do need to be combined. Any piglets should not be kept on flat decks or piglet cages to be contained, and rooting materials must be provided except during that farrowing and nursing period. So temporary confinement, we talked about what not to do, but now we're going to talk about how you can use it. So a lot of people think that you can never confine organic animals. You can, but it does have to be, once again, good record keeping and documentation. So you can provide temporary confinement due to inclement weather, this stage of life, any conditions which may prevent the health, safety, or well-being. So you'll see that a lot of times at night. If you have a known predation in the area, it does have to be documented, but that could be an example. Any risk to soil or water quality that's going on around the area. If you're preventing any healthcare risk due to injury. Anytime you are sorting or shipping out animals for livestock sales, if breeding is occurring at the time, or if their livestock are involved in any 4-H, FFA, or youth projects, they can be combined for those activities as well. So, manure management. The operation also, not only do you have to maintain your livestock, you also have to maintain the manure that's coming on. Every operation needs to have a manure management plan. And in this plan, it's going to detail how that the manure is not going to contribute to any contamination of the crops, the soil, or the water in the surrounding areas due to any metals or pathogens that is included in that substance. You want to make sure that you are recycling as much as you can to be a natural steward of the land. And you must not put your soil or water quality at risk by just leaving the manure out in the pasture in one big pile to contaminate the surrounding areas. So these are some examples of prohibited practices that are not allowed. Some of it does sound a little rough, but I'm not going to go into this too much depth, but if you have any questions, let me know. But this would include the waddling of cattle, any face branding of cattle, tail docking of sheep, shorter than the distal end of the caudal fold, so kind of like a ligament, basically, you'll see on a sheep, and the mulesing of sheep. So, poultry. This is the big group and big change, I would say, out of this new changes that have come for organic livestock. But the origin of livestock and poultry is that poultry must be organically managed from the second day of life. So poultry living conditions, which is 205-241, you have to maintain year-round living conditions that accommodate the health and natural behavior, such as that you would do with mammals. They also need year-round access to the outdoors, shade, shelter, exercise areas, fresh air, sunlight, clean water, but they do need dust bathing. So a lot of times to prevent mites, poultry will get in an area that is really thick in sand or dust, and they'll flop around. It's really cute to see if you've never seen it, but you do have to provide areas for dust bathing. And you also have to provide enough outdoor space where they can poultry can escape any aggressive behaviors going on in the flock. Provide areas that are good for the poultry stage of life, the climate, and the environment that they're in. So going forward, you have indoor requirements and outdoor requirements. So indoors, anytime that they're kind of put in a space that has 4 walls that can be enclosed. We recently had an ACA meeting about this, about how to define it. So it's any space that can be fully enclosed that has 4 full walls. This can be used for temporary confinement, based on the reasoning that I gave earlier, but it still must have that space where they can exhibit those natural behaviors. With this, you do have to do an ammonia level monitoring and testing at least weekly. The exit areas for these structures have to be at least 1 linear foot all the way around for every 365 birds that's in this area. For layers, and another thing to talk about is the difference in poultry. So your layer is going to be those that produce eggs for egg production. Specifically, broilers are going to be used for meat production. And pullets are another term that we're going to discuss. Those are any type of poultry that is used for egg production but hasn't had laid their first eggs yet, and that'll normally be seen up until about 4.5, 6 months. So that's something to note. Another thing is purchase. This is used for roosting. So the natural behavior is then to roost at night and to be safe from predation. So in these areas, layers, your egg birds, 6 inches of perching space for roosting must be provided per bird. So this is really going to get into your stocking density and how much roosting area you have available. All birds must need to have access that would allow for scratching, pecking at the ground, and dust bathing to exhibit those natural behaviors. And then this goes into more what indoor space could be. It could include enclosed porches, lean-tos, stuff like that. So once again, there's a specific indoor stocking density for each type of these poultry. There's going to be also one for the outdoor, but that'll be further on down the line. Moving along to outdoor space, really the same thing as indoor, just outdoor. But you have to provide outdoor space at minimum to all birds, unless they're being quarantined or and confined for those specific reasons. But you have to start it at an early age so that you can encourage your poultry to go outside. At least 75% of the outdoor space must contain soil, and within that soil, it has to have vegetative cover on it. It cannot just be bare ground. Shade would need to be provided in these outdoor areas. And it'll be structures that are not enclosed and without those 4 walls that can be closed in. So a roof with no walls, open netting. There's plenty of ideas, but once again, that would be something I would talk with your certifier about what would be acceptable and what would not be for indoor outdoor poultry space. And then once again, you're going to have that specific outdoor stocking density for each specific type of poultry as well. So temporary confinement, even in poultry, has its own certain regulations. So a lot of this you will see for predation and as well as the stage of life that poultry are in. So anytime that there's inclement weather, you can let it in. These do have to be documented and have your certifier's approval, but if it gets below 32 degrees Fahrenheit or above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, then you can bring your animals inside for temporary confinement reasons. Stage of life would be the first 4 weeks for broilers, 16 weeks for pullets, and until the poultry are fully feathered for any other species other than chickens. So we want to make sure that they are allowed temporary confinement, though, for if it anytime their health, safety, or well-being are jeopardized, if there's any risk to water quality, as well as any preventative injury or illness. So once again, there are some more prohibited practices just in poultry. You'll probably see these a little more than you would with your other livestock, but this would include deep beaking, desnooting, capinization, which is a common or more so common one I would say, which is castration of poultry, any dubbing, toe clippings on chickens in general, and then the toe clippings on turkeys with infrared light at the hatchery when they are 1 day old, and beak trimming at any time after 10 days of stage of life. Moving along to transportation and slaughter, this is 205-242. There's a long list of regulations on this, so of course there are more to this to look into, but this is just a brief update. So during transportation and slaughter, all organic livestock must be able to be identified as organic, and it has to be have a traceability portion throughout the entire time that they're transporting, whether that's for sale or for slaughter. All of these animals need to be fit to go to sale or slaughter. So any calves that you have must have a dry navel cord and be able to walk around without any assistance. And if any animal is seriously injured or showing signs of illness, it does not need to be brought for sale or slaughter. They need to be treated or euthanized. And then making sure, of course, especially in the South, that adequate and season-appropriate ventilation is going on while you're in transportating, whether that be livestock trailers, shipping containers, or any transport, and it also needs to prevent against the cold, the heat, and any stresses that the animal may endure at that time of transport. So during any time of transport, whether sale or slaughter, bedding must be provided on the floors to make sure that the livestock are clean, dry, and comfortable. And once again, if they are using bedding, it needs to be appropriate to the species. And if they're using roughages as bedding, it also, even in transport, it needs to be certified as well. Bedding is required for all animals except for poultry in transport. If the transport time would exceed 8 hours, which is normally going to be your out-of-state times, or if you're stopping, starting a lot, then that really does need to be very in-depthly recorded, and it needs to determine how the animal and livestock was managed organically and welfare was maintained all throughout each step of that process. So that could be hourly or just based on the time period. And the time of transport starts when animals are loaded and when they are arrived at their final destination and switched over owners, I would say. Anyone who is seeing this, they have to have emergency plans. Say if there's an accident or the animals break loose, anything for that. Anything that really could go wrong, you need to have a plan for to document, especially if you're going over that 8-hour time period. Avian slaughter. So in this, there are certain rules brought on by the USDA, and poultry standard practices can be for mammals or poultry as well. But in the avian specifically, you can't have any lame birds, shackled, hung, or carried by their legs. They have to be able to freely move themselves. And if you are going into slaughter, if you're running them through an automated system or shackled them, they have to be stunned prior to that slaughter process, except for the reasoning of religious slaughter. And then they all must be completely deceased before they're placed in the scalding tank.
Okay, Madison. Well, thank you for all of those livestock updates. Quite comprehensive, but we appreciate you putting that together. So I want to move on in our last few minutes about some upcoming opportunities to partner with Clemson, through the TOPP program. So here's just a few of the top accomplishments and, kind of projects and impacts that we've seen from these projects. We've done a few fact sheets. Certification roadshows was one we really kind of enjoyed doing, and still propose doing that next year. If you want a certification talk, 30 minutes, an hour, something like that, give us a call. We might be able to provide it for you. Cultivating Tomorrow was one we worked with students on. We kind of enjoyed that. One of the things here, Standards Handbook, our green books, as we call them, we produce these. This is a printed version of the National Organic Regulations. While an online version is going to be more accurate, more up to date, easily searchable, we really feel like this is a strong resource. So you can have on site, so you can be standing in a cattle barn and have a conversation about a certain section of the regulation with the farmer. And we'd love to give them the farmers so that they have the regulations and they can throw it on their dashboard and say, oh, well, does this fit or not fit, if they have an idea or something. So something we've really enjoyed. So, and I just wanted to talk briefly here too. We've forged a lot of friendships with this program. I think that's one of the best, what am I trying to say? Like indirect outcomes of this is the friendships we have forged and the community building that has opened up for us as an agency. I hope we've opened up a lot of community to folks in our area. So two more things. One this year, an organic certifier update call, again, similar to this one. This one will be focused on livestock regulations. We're going to be doing this December 16th. I don't think we have a time yet, but we'll be sending a registration email out soon. We'll share that with Kendra and the FOG folks. so they can share it to the southeastern top region. And then next year, we're proposing a 2-day symposium kind of surrounding the certification basics. We've done 2 of these so far now. One was kind of producer focused, one was train the trainer type event. So we're hoping to provide more information about that opportunity soon, and just kind of what numbers and where and all of that we'll be able to handle. So with that, we thank you all for joining us. We thank you for FOG for hosting this event, and we will open it up to questions. I hope you found this regulatory update informative, useful, and hope that this the resources we were able to bring you guys help broaden your organic understanding. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gavin and Madison. I'm going to be stopping the recording here. To everyone who's watching this after the event online, of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We look forward to hearing from you.